Hey, hey, hey. Buenos dias and good morning. There's Jeffon, my brother. All right. Good morning, Center for Spiritual Living Palm Desert and friends everywhere. It's so great to be with you on this Tuesday morning, regular Tuesdays with Jeffon Seeley, my brother, soul brother. And we're working on the book. Does that show up
Yes.
backward when you look
No,
at it?
no. It mirrors, it flips it for us.
Oh, it does? Okay, great. Because it
Yep.
looks backward in my screen. As we said last week, we're going to start walking through this book. How you doing, my brother? How you feel?
Doing really good. Things, yeah, life is going well.
Anything mentionable in the last week that's for you, your wife, your family? Anything pop up?
Just the continued conversation around these things that we've been doing.
Yeah.
We're eager and hopeful as to, where next year is going to bring us as she finishes up this next year of her fellowship, her residency at
Yeah.
Loma Linda.
Yeah.
And trying to stay cool. It's been a heat wave as you're well aware.
So this is a heat wave. I talked about it a little bit yesterday. I just figured that here we are in the desert again. I had the privilege and the just the opportunity where I live now to look out over these mountains here, and it has been hot. I mean, we got close to 120 yesterday, and so you're a little bit further inland, so you got maybe close to 100. Is
About
that
100,
yeah?
yeah.
So
And
this is a
that's
heat wave.
toasty.
Is it a heat wave?
Well, this is my second summer here, and whenever I walk out and it's above 90, it feels extremely hot.
If I was in Seattle and it was like this, we'd be losing our minds.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
We had a where was it? It was quite a while ago, maybe 10 years ago. For 3 day stretch, we had 103, 103, 104. And I didn't have any air conditioning in my apartment at that time.
Hmm.
And it was I'd go in and I'd take a full length towel and I'd flush it out with cold water, and then I'd lay on the ground and pull over myself. It only lasted for like 10 minutes, and then it was
Yeah.
yeah.
You do it down there in that 120 degrees, I think you might get 30 seconds.
You know what I think about? I just want to say this real quick. You know what I think about is our all of our troops that are deployed in Afghanistan and Iraq and things like that. They deal with weather like this all the time, plus like 50, 60 pounds of gear on their body.
Yeah.
What they're doing over there. I just think about that, and I mention that only because when I was doing the golf academy, when I was at the golf academy, there was a lot of military folks there that I met, and we got to share stories and things like that. But I can only imagine what it's like to be in that extreme heat, you know, being for our nation and with 50 pounds of gear on. That's got to be just intense.
Yeah, yeah. There's well, before I say this, obviously namaste to you. It's always great to see you. And I've been so grateful for the way in which things have aligned that have, allowed us to be able to interact a lot more and build a friendship.
Yeah.
And then obviously the CSL Palm Desert community.
Yeah.
So many incredible people there and beyond, as you say. But
Yeah.
there's an important point that I also want to quickly touch upon,
Please.
just the history of the lands that we're on, and really reflecting and acknowledging the ways in which indigenous communities were able to thrive and flourish in all different types of environment. I mean, we know both from spending time in Seattle, I spent some time there, the indigenous communities there, and then we think of down here. I mean, though the desert seems as if it's extremely hot, excruciating, painful for us when we're in a cushy air conditioned room.
Yeah.
But those indigenous communities, I mean, that was their sacred land. It still is sacred.
Just living. It's the way it was, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Amen. Well, we can translate that too, or just appreciate that, bringing in to today and how we appreciate each other. Consider. I think what we need to do more of is consider each other. Like what you're saying. Consider our indigenous brothers and sisters. Think about other people and how they live and how important that is. And to put, the old saying is put yourself in somebody else's shoes, but just that's compassion, right? Just consider how other folks have lived
Hmm.
and appreciate it.
Yeah,
Find appreciation.
so true.
Yeah. Yeah.
So true.
I want to make sure that you folks know that you can please, we want your comments. We want your input, questions, everything. This is what we do on Tuesdays with Jeffon. Obviously, Dr. Joe's heading out on sabbatical. Maybe not obvious, but he is heading out on sabbatical. So Jeffon and I will be together for Tuesdays for the next 8 to 10 weeks. And I'm excited about it. So here we go, my brother.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, here we go. Yeah. Have you seen anything recently about, I know generally what we do when we get on the show is talk about race and relations, things like that. Have you seen anything, current things going on that you want to address? Anything off the top of your head before we get into the book that we've agreed to walk through?
One thing that has been popping up in conversations that I've been having with some people close to me, my mentor and whatnot, is, and this may just be from my perspective. Well, obviously it is,
Yeah.
but it seems as if we're in this interesting place where we acknowledge that there's things that are taking place in terms of racial inequity or inequality, however we want to term that.
Yep.
But there's this interesting sense that it feels, from my perspective, that it's almost like we talked about it. We spent a few weeks over there. We spent a few weeks talking about this. And now let's move on. There's something, it's just not getting the same attention. And there's almost this sense that it's like, okay, we talked about it, we addressed it. We still haven't really came up with any solutions, but we're moving forward. And I just want to really bring attention and awareness that this is not a spiritually bypassing, deflecting thing that we can embrace. It is something that is extremely deep rooted for us to move forward and create that equity and equality for all.
So the idea is that it might be just like a fad or a passing phase.
Yeah, as with many things, especially in America, I mean, we're in this culture that it's instant gratification. We can spend a little bit of time, not too much energy on it. And aside from some individuals that are willing to go deep, I mean, look at even New Thought communities. People can grab a book and read it. And then there are those people who really dive deep into it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I just want to really hopefully bring that to the forefront, that this is an ongoing conversation that we're not going to be able to talk about for a month or a year and suddenly it's gone. It's deeply embedded into everything that we do.
I've seen that, Jeffon, too. Like, especially with my white brothers and sisters, that we want to just get over with. We want to have the conversation, and can we stop talking about it now? And no, we can't. And I see that with my white brothers and sisters. We can't just not talk about it. We have to keep talking about it. And that's how change happens.
Yeah. I want to address, Don said, pray in. And, this is something I want to say very quickly. I've found in my life that prayer is an ongoing thing. So for instance, praying in is as simple as acknowledging the light in you, as well as everybody else, consciously and attentively, and knowing that the words in which I am speaking are not just the flesh, so to say, but there is an essence and energy that is empowering me to speak in this moment of now. And for all of that, I'm grateful. For all of that, I'm appreciative. So I just kind of want to say that for myself, sometimes it's not about, okay, let me, shut my eyes and do an affirmative prayer, but I can pray with my eyes wide open.
That's right.
As I believe we all can, and meditate with our eyes wide open.
That's right. Joel Goldsmith calls it praying without ceasing. Praying without ceasing. Your life becomes a prayer. Passionate One says the media may have passed on and no longer be focused on matters of race, but something has ignited in us where we can continue to progress in our own understanding.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Forgive
Yeah.
my I try to read well.
It's okay. It's okay. Audible is a charm then, huh?
Yeah,
No.
that's right. But yeah, we have to, but our own understanding needs to grow, right? Our understanding has to evolve. And we do that by having these conversations and educating ourselves. And that's why I'm grateful to be walking through this book as well. We have to be able to expose ourselves to new ideas so that we can grow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And be willing to step over that proverbial threshold, or off the cliff, so to say,
Yeah.
into the unknown, that goes beyond our possible current understanding, to be able to capture and encompass that which is calling us to, or begging us to step forward.
And what is that, Jeffon? What's calling us to step forward?
From my honest perspective, it really comes down to removing that dyad that I often speak about, that superior, inferior, for us to begin to recognize human equality, not just in two words, but the way that we live our life. And this book really begins to circle about some of these concepts that I've been sharing, he makes it very definable and specific in terms of addressing anti-racist policies, that are not just solely based on continuing racial inequity, which we see. And the results that we are seeing is based upon policies that have been put into motion in the past. And policies could be laws, could be procedures, practices, the ways in which organizations are ran, the values, the culture, all of those things that continue to perpetuate those inequalities that we're trying to diminish. But I think that solely focusing on equity without us beginning to do the inner work necessary to truly embody human equality, will be running a very fast race. And then after the race, we realize that we've only ran this much of the leg.
I agree. So if you think it's a marathon, it's still a sprint, but it's a bunch of sprints, and then it's still a marathon.
Yeah. And I mean, how long has this been embedded in our culture?
Yeah.
400 plus years. And then we think of England, and even longer than that, we think of the empires prior to that. I mean, it's deeply embedded into the human psyche, particularly the Eurocentric ways in which we operate.
Eurocentric. Yep. I love it. So as a white man, and you're a black man,
Biracial. Yeah.
Yeah. How do we meet each other? I mean, like, do people actually walk up to each other and think about race? Like, if I was to walk up to you and think, hey, here's an interracial person, or if I was to walk up to, like my guest yesterday, Reverend Arlene,
Yeah.
there's a black woman. Do we think about that? Is it appropriate to think about that? How do we think about race?
Yeah, that very quick, passionate one. It's this book, How to Be Anti-Racist. It's the book that we're going to be covering as we go through the next, I want to say, 8 to 10 weeks.
Yeah. Yep.
We recommend it thus far. We're a chapter in, so you can definitely catch up.
Oh, it's good. It's very good. I see from the comment. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
So I don't think that we can not see race. There are these, I think that there are these subtle things that are embedded within our unconscious that we decipher that, or we can see, we know when we're having a conversation or being around individuals that are different than ourselves. Now, that's just the way of life. Diversity is everywhere. I mean, even if you get 2 Black people together, or 2 Latinx people together, or 2 white people together, there are still differences amongst those individuals. It's just maybe not on the physical level that you can see. But then we talk about gender, or we talk about age, we talk about a variety of things. But I think realistically here, it's not about trying to be, I don't see any color. It's trying to acknowledge and recognize the sacred person that is standing in front of you. And the race helps to craft the way that they see themselves, the way that the external world sees themselves. And that is not something that can be just bypassed or looked over or around. And I feel like in our case here, the conversation that we're having, it's really incredible because we're able to bring our uniqueness that makes us who we are, and then build this bridge to have an even greater understanding around, a variety of things. And it's not here for you to tell me what to do or me to tell you what to do. It's an open, honest, and authentic conversation that allows us collectively to walk into that unknown.
And to learn from each other.
Mm-hmm.
We have to listen, right? So my daughter is 7 and her best friend is 7. And I wish I could show this picture. I wish I could have brought her up. So my daughter is, she looks white. She's a quarter Mexican, but she's Caucasian. And her best friend is black. And they have the time of their lives. So how's the world going to inform them about race going forward? You know what I mean? They just carry on. That's all they do.
Yeah.
They just hang out. How do I and I know that I kind of know the answers to this, but we're just, having a conversation.
Yeah.
How do I continue to make sure that they're both of them are safe going forward?
Yeah. As my mentor says, there's no question that you ask for which you don't know the answer. No.
I understand.
No,
I understand.
Well, Charles, so I'm going to see here in a little bit, once things kind of settle down, some of my really great friends that I grew up with in Salt Lake. And in this unique area of Salt Lake that is predominantly a white community, there was myself, half black, half white, one of my really great friends who's Tongan, so Polynesian, another one of my friends who is Mexican, another one of my friends who's from El Salvador, and then another one of my friends who is Jewish. And we've been friends, some of us since first grade, kindergarten, and the rest of us since 7th grade.
Yeah.
And there is this camaraderie, and we are able to have these type of interactions, probably similar to the experience of your daughter at a young age, where that just doesn't even pop into your mind.
It's not even there. It doesn't even matter. I'm just hanging out with my buddy is all she thinks. I know it. Yep.
Now, the thing that we are recognizing, and maybe we can touch upon this as we begin discussing the book a little more, are those racist ideas or racist policies that are ingrained into many of our systems, including education, that creates those divisions where we begin to draw a line, so to say, or find the differences between ourselves and others.
Yeah.
And if there is not that close relationship, this is what I think, there is not that authentic relationship where you've already befriended people who may be totally different than you, then those rigid racist type of policies or things that we learn create this illusion of who the other are.
Yeah.
So, and I'm using the word racist because I think that it's important. And I'm not calling anybody particularly racist. I'm just addressing this larger theme of things.
Well, what you just said though is of who the other are. Like we create an other at some point. How we're informed as a human being, we create an other, and it's not necessarily race. It's anything that doesn't line up with who we are. Yeah.
So there's an interesting idea that we'll touch upon, and it's anti-racist ideas.
That's right.
Anti-racist policies.
Yeah.
And those are policies that go about creating racial equity or equality.
Yeah.
And that is the opposite of racism. It's not that I'm not racist or I'm sitting to the side or I don't see color. It's no, I'm actually instituting ideas. And as you said prior to jumping on the call, from that standpoint, there's no neutrality.
Yeah. There can't be neutrality.
So,
as we talked about last week, we're still on the, please log in, everybody, and let's have your comments. There can't be neutrality in this conversation.
mm-hmm.
I don't think there can be. And
I'm with you there.
Yeah,
I'm with you there.
You got to be on it. All right, let's see. Let's get into it, shall we?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
That's what we said. So I've got a few things. I'm going to start with I've highlighted the book. I've got circles and stuff, and here we go. I wanted to say something about my daughter, though. What was it? And her buddies. I'll think about it.
Okay.
Every policy. Oh, here we go. Let's see. There is no such thing as a non-racist or race-neutral policy. Every policy in every institution, in every community, in every nation is producing or sustaining either racial inequity or equity between racial groups. I mean, that's just rich.
Yeah.
You can't be neutral.
Mm-hmm.
So what are we doing? I guess that's a question to everybody that's listening. What are we up to?
Yeah. And for those individuals who are like, well, racial inequity or equity, I don't understand. And the way that he defines it, and I have my little notes right here.
Yeah, good.
I just typed up a few.
Yeah.
Racial inequity is when two or more racial groups are not standing on approximately even footing. Racial equity is when two or more racial groups are standing on a relatively even footing. Mm. And so that kind of shows, okay, if the policy is structured to perpetuate racial inequities, yes, where one person's standing here or one group of people are standing here and another is there, then that is creating that inequity. That is a policy that is centered in, if we're talking about racism.
Yeah. Or economics, right? Same thing.
Yeah. And then I often ask my workshops when I do these conversations, name a time in American history when it's been an even footing for everybody. Hmm. And the answer is it's never been that way. So then if go ahead if you.
Well, no, I agree. It's never been that way. But consciousness. How does consciousness and principle play into this? Because I think that if those that are underserved and that have been well, let's just say it, victims of racism, we have to build consciousness in order for those folks to actually. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to get to something. There's a consciousness that I have that allows me to move through the world in the way that I do. And I believe that consciousness hasn't been embodied by underserved people or the folks that this book was written for.
I hear it. Mm-hmm.
Do you?
Yeah. And there's a part in this, and we're going to be jumping around the book. So maybe for this next time we get together, we'll read chapter 2. But right now we're kind of touching upon the introduction and chapter 1. Yeah. As for page numbers, we're kind of going to be bouncing around.
Yeah.
There was one portion, and I'm looking down at the book, where he was talking about that idea of what his family's experience in Christianity. That's and right. This may be in alignment with what you are mentioning, but
his mom and his dad, right?
His mom and his dad.
Yeah.
And they were just talking about the evangelical church. This is on page 15. Yep. And he mentioned, it preached against any attempt of the black man to stand on his own 2 feet.
That's right.
And so perhaps And I think about my family, who is still very much involved in traditional Christian churches, not Mormonism, but traditional Christian churches.
Yep.
And there is this sense of, I have to be worthy of this salvation.
Yeah.
And I really love the idea on the following page when he's talking about a Christian is one who is working for liberation.
Yes.
And then this idea, so be the type of Christian that Jesus was, which was a revolutionary,
Yeah.
like a revolutionary inspired individual.
Yes.
And though obviously we're not talking about, chapter 8, verse 9 or anything like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Perhaps there's this idea where individuals, and I'm thinking for people very close to me who have not even begun to open the doorway of what consciousness means. And even having that conversation. I'm thinking of my cousins who live up there in Federal Way. I'm thinking of some of my cousins who are in Tacoma. I'm
Yeah.
thinking of some of my friends who live in San Bernardino.
Yep.
I talk about consciousness and embodying and embracing these deeper principles, and it's almost like a foreign language.
Yep.
And I don't know where I'm going with this, but
Well, the idea of consciousness, the idea of the word consciousness and what it means to me, that just means being awake to something. So what your friends or your family in Federal Way and wherever they are, what are they awake to?
they're still very much in this identity that they need they need to pray and be repent for their sins. They still go to a church that there's no representation of people who look like them on the walls.
Mm-hmm.
There's often no people who look like them preaching or leading the services. And it just seems as if, for instance, a book is extremely powerful.
Yes.
And we know that. We can pick up Science of Mind. We could pick up, The Way to the Kingdom by Joseph Brenner, or any of these books. But without opening them and then going through it and challenging yourself to expand, which I think goes back to Passionate One's comment around really gaining a deeper understanding of ourselves.
Yes.
I just think that it's easier to default to not doing that. And it's easy to maintain victimhood.
It's the comfort zone, right?
Yeah.
Like if
Yeah.
I really want to wake up to race, to all my racist tendencies, to the way I other anybody, race, like you said, money, whatever it might be. It's uncomfortable to wake up.
It's easier to stay asleep or to act as if one is awake, which I often call sleeping with their eyes wide open.
Sleeping with their eyes wide open. Yeah.
Yeah. Which I know that I fall into that. And it's a continuous thing. It's not a one-time occurrence. And it's the same for my family and them who are my family on my dad's side who are African American. For them to not, some of them not recognizing the greatness or the power by way of what enables them to be. And then I think of on my mom's side, my Caucasian side, or my Scottish side, so to say, and individuals who are unwilling to actually begin addressing some of these deep-rooted issues. And so it's like on an individual level, we all must be willing to go deeper into whatever that may be, or into a multitude of things. And collectively, as we go deeper, then we collectively move forward and almost create this new paradigm.
How do we walk from being staunch in our current paradigm? How do we walk from there to, and here's the fingers, this is me walking. How do we walk from there to being open? What do we do? How do we do that? What's the process? If I'm so convinced that this is the way it is, and yet it's not, because it's not working for humanity, how do I walk over there? What do you think?
I've been thinking a lot about that concept. Maybe it's not a linear thing. Maybe it's not we'll do this and then you get to here and then you do this and then you get to there, which often, at least my mind, thinks very, very linear. But it seems as if the greatest insights of awakening that has really shook my core and propelled me, whether I was ready or not, into a different realm, was not linear in nature, but was like a mastery of context, where suddenly I got an insight that was all the way over here. And that insight allowed me to push past all these seeming steps that I thought I had to take to get there. And so maybe it's in the process of self-exploration, introspection, and going through a process of identifying these things that then opens a doorway where we can transcend our current realm for what is awaiting us, which is just a higher, greater version of ourselves that's already there. It's not like we're going to become this new person out of nowhere. It's already inside of us.
Yeah.
It's just like maybe peeling back or pulling back a veil that is preventing us from recognizing that.
And folks have to understand that there is a greater version, that there is a greater expression of themselves.
Endlessly.
Like endlessly. All right, let's read this from a Passionate One. Many of the ways we create the concept of who is other are completely unconscious. By osmosis, from our environments when we're children, having a friend who is different, like your daughter, does help to form positive feelings toward others that will help to be non-racist in our life. Yeah. Well, amen. Amen.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I was talking with my little sisters about my grandmother, who helped raise us when I was young in Utah. She would read us books all the time before we go to sleep. And I was asking my little sisters, do you ever remember a book that we were read that had a children of or like a Black child in it?
Yep.
And there was not one. Until my grandma bought me the autobiography of Martin Luther King when I was like in 5th grade. So that's another way in which,
that's right.
Disney princesses. Okay, now they got, Moana and a few others. But when I was growing up, you didn't see any. Anyways, it's just very deeply ingrained.
That's what it is, though. And I agree 100%. And that's why I find it important to make sure that my daughter has Black Barbies. They're not all white. We have Black Barbies that she's playing with. Or she wants to play with the headdress and comb hair and stuff like that, to make sure that face is Black or brown, whatever it is, because that informs the future.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do we have? Shift by starting with willingness. Yes. Amen. Oh, passionate. Okay. For me, a key to moving forward is curiosity. Can we be open and curious what others believe? Open to hearing other experience. Yeah, of course. That I think that's it. Open to how they see themselves, especially.
Hey, one thing with what Passionate One said, open to hearing their experiences. This is something that I myself have been working on, to hear experiences that are different than mine, and experiences where individuals may not necessarily agree with what I'm trying to share with them. And seeing if I can reach a place. I guess this is where the ceasing without praying kind of comes in, where I am not trying to shake them or shape them into my perspective, but instead be able to listen. And while I may not agree, and I think we talked about this, be able to still engage in a conversation and embrace those experiences.
Yes.
Particularly in this climate that we find ourselves in. We know how politicized things can get. We know how religion can really sway people's viewpoints one way or another. Yes. We know how racial tensions can do the same, but that idea to being truly open to hear their experiences is a great practice of compassion.
And that builds trust. And that's one of my fundamental things is, how do we build trust? If we build trust, then we build a unity. And if we're willing to listen, we were up on in the mountain today, and I was doing my sermon. We're filming, and a guy came over to me, and he was like talking about his path and this and that, and in a moment we built trust because all I did was listen to him about his path. and his journey with whatever he was up. I mean, all the things that he was up to, drugs, coming from LA out here, the whole nine. Listening.
Yep.
We just have to listen to each other, huh?
Yeah. It's a
and
powerful
share our truth.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Let's see. I want to touch upon one particular point in the book that I saw.
Let's do it.
So the definition that he has of racism, which I don't know what page that is on. It might be on page, the top of page 18. Racism is a marriage of racist policies and racist ideas that produces and normalizes racial inequities. And then again, racial inequity then is where two or more racial groups are not standing on approximately even footing.
Yep.
And what are racist ideas?
Yep.
Well, he said a racist idea is one that suggests one racial group is inferior or superior to another racial group in any way. So we see how racism is really the combination of an idea where that inferior superior exists, and racial inequity flourishes, and that feeds those policies obviously feed that and fuel it into existing.
Yeah.
It's very specific, it's very definable, and it actually can be measured.
It can be measured. That's a great point. It can be measured.
So when we throw around these words like institutionalized racism, systemic racism, and I feel what we're really pointing at are these particular policies that normalizes these inequities that have become so much a part of our system that that's just how it is.
It's just how, and that's the issue. It's just how it is.
Yeah.
And it's the truth is it's up to, my brothers and sisters, the Caucasian folks. Well, you're my brother. Everybody's my brother and sister. But it's still up to the white folks to understand that we are a fish in water. That's the way it is. And it's a hard conversation to have.
Definitely.
And I hope, I hope the offering won't go down this week, but we have to keep talking about it. It's mostly a white issue that we have to keep talking about because we're a fish in water and we don't get it.
Yeah. And, the thing is we're doing this together. For everybody who is listening and watching, and maybe if there's something that has been said that strikes a chord, it's by no means vilifying any individual
or meant to be divisive.
No, it's an honest conversation around the realities of countless individuals, and we're all participating in it. And there's something that we all have a role to play in creating more equitable and equal opportunity for all people.
That's right. You know what I thought, Jeffon, too, in the intro to the book, when he talked about when he got up on stage and he was giving a talk, he was I think it was a Martin Luther King Jr. oratory competition he was in.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And he got up there and he talked about, Black people need to do this and da 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 da. And he was like, whoa, like, what am I doing? This isn't what I want. After reflection, this isn't what I really want to be saying. He was cutting down his own people, if you will, rather than raising them up. And that's what we have to do, right? Raise everybody up.
Yeah.
You remember reading that? Yeah.
That's so. Yeah, and I think about it for myself in times where I've had conversations with people in my family, and I'm like, well, just pull yourself up, or reaffirming an image that I believe that young Black men were supposed to live up to, was myself reinforcing these policies and ideas that have been passed down to me that keep that lie going. Yeah, that was a really great point. I see that somebody mentioned an anti-racist policy, which I'll share very quickly.
Yeah. Can you give me an example of an anti-racist policy? Yep.
I'll try my best.
Yeah.
But the definition is any measure that produces or sustains racial equity between racial groups. An anti-racist policy, though there were still racial inequities a part of it, was when in the civil rights movement, when Black people had the right to vote.
Hmm.
But we know that that only led so far because there were still things in place that stop that redlining, once you're in trouble with the law, that right is taken away. And it kind of goes into depth around that. Another anti-racist policy could have been or was integration of schools. However, we saw the effects, that the ripple that went out because of that, because that policy was not open to be receptive to a vast majority of people. And therefore they pulled their kids out of those schools, or just simply did everything they could do to prevent certain people of color from going into those schools. So anti-racist policy.
Was affirmative action an anti-racist policy? Are you familiar with affirmative action?
Yeah.
Is that anti-racist?
I would say I believe that it was an attempt to create a more equitable opportunity for individuals. However, I've heard of a variety of people, my white brothers and sisters, say that that was something that took away opportunity from them.
Yep.
Now, what's interesting, and I'll try my best to capture this thought. My wife and I were driving yesterday, and I was trying to share this book, the ideas from the book. And when I'm doing that, I'm very scatterbrained. None of you are like that. That's just me.
Just you.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I was saying, there's this idea that, okay, if a particular group of people have been at a higher footing than other racial groups throughout, let's just say, the past 50 years or 100 years, and then suddenly something like affirmative action bumps up a group of people, and these individuals still want to maintain their higher footing, that feels as if they are being oppressed because individuals are being provided with a semi-even playing field. Now, if we wanted to get to an even playing field, it's not just raising these people up to there, it's having both of these people meet in the middle, which would seem as if you are taking certain rights away from certain groups of people because they are so accustomed to that way of receiving those things. Yeah. And so it's like this, it's not just, oh, well, bring them here because that's going to shake up this foundation. And if you take people down, then that's going to shake, it's not just this like pass this law and that's it. It's something that it's a very deep process.
Yeah. So
did that make sense?
Well, to me it does.
Okay. That's all.
No, keep the comments coming, folks. Too. I mean, this is meant to stir things up. We want to talk about things. So, in this, that's what I'm talking about, though, the fishbowl. So when like affirmative action, like we need some help in order to get here. When it pisses these people off, that's part of it, right? I mean, that's part of the system.
Right.
It's part of it. If you're pissed off, you're white, here's affirmative action, you're pissed off, that's part of the system.
Yeah. I was doing diversity and inclusion training in a small town in Kansas. This was last year. And I like going out to different restaurants when I'm there. I'm by myself, so I just go wherever. I went to this Thai place, and they sat me kind of close to this group that was older, a group of older individuals, older Caucasian people. And I'm the only, person of color aside from the individuals who own the restaurant. And they're talking very loud about racial discrimination and saying things like, well, if they would just take advantage of the opportunities that we gave them, affirmative action. I've seen some of my closest friends when I was working lose a job because they wanted to give a Black person a job. I've seen kids get accepted into school and other kids who were smarter because of affirmative action. And I'm not saying that they speak for everybody. They do not. but this was just a conversation around a dinner table.
Yep.
And I actually went over to them and said, I'm like, you guys are speaking very loud, and I can't just sit here and listen to this. Would any of you trade places with somebody who was Black in this area? And they just look at me. Yeah. And I said, perhaps maybe what we have to recognize, there's something much deeper than just giving people, quote unquote, a fair shot when they are still on a playing field that is uneven. And so maybe we should think a little bit more before we express. And was that right for me to do? I don't know. I felt called to do it. If I wouldn't have done it, I would have been upset with myself.
Yeah.
But
it was right because you did it. You felt moved to do it. Why not? Right?
Yeah. And the same is true for friends and family who are not Caucasians. I can go to them and say, you do not have to be a victim because of circumstances. You can be empowered in spite of the inequities. You can recognize your own inherent equality right now. And in doing that, you open the doorway for something even greater for your life.
So how do folks do that? How actually does that, because there's, in spite of inequity, people of color, which I actually don't agree with saying people of color. We talked about this last week, I think, didn't we?
We did. Yep.
Because everybody's got color, just whoever you are, but Black and brown people don't have a fair shake. How do they reconcile having a fair shake? What'd you just say? Dang it. How do they reconcile it, getting a fair shake when they don't have a fair shake, though? It's like, when you say don't be a victim, but they are victims in some way.
Yeah.
I know that's not principle, but that's just me talking in the experiences that I've had. How do we reconcile that?
So I guess where I'm really getting at is the external world may or may not change. We can be at the mercy of the external world, but I think actually principle is to recognize inherently that you need not be a victim. And you are not caged or confined in any way within your inner sphere, your consciousness, your being, your essence. Though you may show up in the world and there may be these little boundaries around us, that's just the way it is out here. And we can use our energy to begin to dismantle those systems, which I believe Martin Luther King did, which I believe, the Crazy Horse did in the Lakota tradition, which I believe many of the individuals who faced oppression, they recognized their inherent gift. They were not a victim. Though they were victims in the external world, they used their power to go forward and dismantle.
That's right. That's what it is. So victimhood is a mental construct.
Is a mental construct, and that does not dismiss or diminish the suffering that may be a very real reality in the physical world.
Because that happens, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, we can't ignore that.
Yeah, we can't ignore that. I think we have to wake up to that. So let's see, Adair, thinking we don't have to bring some down to bring others up. Let our intention be to raise all. Oh, amen.
Yeah, because I think I did this. Okay, let me address this. Yeah, let me address this lever system.
I still think it's appropriate. Go ahead. Yep.
Perhaps it's not bringing these people down, but in bringing these people up, there has been a discussion, and I've seen it firsthand in corporate world, that while you're bringing these people up, these individuals whose ground didn't change feel as if they are being oppressed or passed over for promotions because of policies like affirmative action.
Yep.
So I don't know. But yes,
perhaps. No, go ahead. Because I actually think that happens.
Yeah.
Folks think that I'm now all of a sudden white folks think I'm being oppressed because of affirmative action or whatever it might be. But it's just to get back to where it should be, where it ought to be.
Yeah. And that there brings up the idea that discrimination is taking place.
Yeah.
But I do agree with what he said. You know, maybe our intention could be to raise all, and maybe the raising of all is not just in quote unquote quote unquote opportunity, but instead
You wouldn't.
in consciousness.
Yeah.
Maybe that is where our intention is to rise, is in consciousness. That is the only place the magic happens. Policy, like we've seen with integration, will not take place without a consciousness that is able to be elevated.
Yeah.
Because we will still hold on tight to those past ideas that were racist or discriminatory in nature.
First in heaven and then in earth. Things are always created twice. First in heaven and then on earth. First in consciousness and then in form. And that's where policy comes from. And that's why we have to keep having these conversations about consciousness. Because when we inform our consciousness in a new way, new policy can come from that. And that's what changes our earthly living.
Yep.
Passionate One says, principle is to know your inherent worth, like Jeffon says. And in Science of Mind, we have the concept of knowing your good is already yours while making efforts to move toward it. Yeah. I swear I can read. I know I can read.
We'll blow up the words for you next time. No.
Seriously, do I need glasses? Oh my goodness.
No, that's a great point though. It's to know and honor recognize your inherent worth. You're at the center of divine mind. You are connected to the essence of life that fuels everything. That is immeasurable power and potential and capability. Now, knowing that good is already yours because it's out there, the possibility exists, and making efforts to move towards it in spite of what may or may not happen in the external world. Suddenly you're not attached to what happens out here because you know in here you're coming from a place of authenticity, a place of connection, a place of compassion, a place of peace. And the cookie will crumble as it may, but inherently you know that it's already done. It's already so.
That's right. Amen. Is it as easy as that?
I would like to say it is, but in my experience, no.
It's not. But principle is still principle, right?
Yeah.
We still have to honor and worship principle, and allow that to be our guiding thing that will allow this to happen. But it's not simple, right?
No, I mean, and it takes real work. Thinking is one of the greatest gifts that we have, but most people just, allow their thinking to default into past thinking patterns. And it's in my experience, has been difficult to be conscious of the thoughts that I'm continuously fueling and willing to go into that realm of those unconscious patterns and try to disassemble those to more empowering ones. That takes, in my experience, very real work.
Well, it's like a construction worker when you're going to, like, let's say that you're gonna, the Kingdom. Very few people know the Kingdom back in Seattle. They had to bring that thing down and then take away all the rubble. They imploded it, took away all the rubble in order to build a new stadium there. That's a lot of work. It's the same thing in consciousness, right? It's the same thing in consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
It takes months and years in order to do that.
Yeah. We don't have just a building. We have mountain ranges.
Yeah.
And you could imagine how difficult it would be to remove the San Bernardino mountain range over the course of a week or a month, when throughout your life it's been creating these unique ways in which huge peaks of despair or worry or fear or anyways.
I can't believe we're already at the top of the hour. It's crazy.
Yeah.
How do we do this? By the way, your hair looks really good, man.
Yeah, there's this conditioner from Costco that does the trick. I just,
it looks good.
Get some water, shake it out, a little conditioner, put it in, and
hey, is your wife in the room today?
Yeah, she is, but you see I have these on.
Oh, okay.
So
Well, say hi. Say hi to her.
I will.
Okay. I want to read one more thing real quick. Racist policy, this is on page 18 as well. Racist policy says exactly what the problem is and where the problem is. Institutional racism and structural racism and systemic racism are redundant. Racism itself is institutional, structural, and systemic.
Hmm.
We have to be about the work of breaking it down.
Yeah. Policy, policy. And for those of you who do have the book, I highly encourage you to look at the top of page 22, where it kind of touches upon white privilege. And he mentioned, white privilege, you see it maybe most in life itself. White lives matter to the tune of 3.5 additional years over Black lives in the United States. Which is not just the most glaring of a host of health disparities, starting from infancy,
Yeah.
where Black infants die at twice the rate of white infants. Cancer. My wife has been very involved in women of color, their disparities with mothers who are giving birth. I think that mothers of color who give birth die at, I want to say, like 3% or 3 times higher rate than white mothers. And then it goes all the way down to votes, and the disenfranchising of mass incarceration, voter ID laws, redlining. So those are racist policies that continue to perpetuate the racial inequities that we are here to dismantle. And together we can do it by having conversations and then continuing to go forward. So
yes. We have to dismantle them. We have to. And I think that I'm aware of my post, but I think most Caucasian folks, white folks, are afraid of dismantling those because they're afraid of Black and brown folks taking control.
yeah.
But you know what? All we're talking about is equity. All we're talking about is equity and equality. So, hey, hopefully I'm not fired after today's show. But if I am,
please keep Reverend Charles.
What's up, brother?
No, you can't leave. And I hope everybody is just willing to engage in this conversation with us.
That's right. That's all we have to do is be engaged in the conversation. Because at the end of the day, what we know, what you and I both know, is that principle, we just have to be in principle. And that is you and I are one. Mm-hmm. And as brothers and sisters, in all the ways that we look, in all the ways that we look, that's why I love traveling, because you just go and see people, what they're doing is existing within the context of their own culture. And I love that. And our culture here is it's a puzzle. We have so many different people and where they come from, and where I come from, and where you come from, and it's a puzzle. It's a tapestry of mastery.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Hey, Rev Charles, how is there a way that individuals who are reading the book with us can share their thoughts or things that we would like to discuss? Is there a way that maybe we could have them email some thoughts of the upcoming chapter prior to next week's call?
So what we've done today is basically the intro and then chapter 1. So we're going to do chapter 2 next week.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah. So let's see. Email info@cslpalmdesert.org. info@cslpalmdesert.org, and then we'll field those questions through that.
Yeah.
Does that sound?
Yeah, that would be great. So it's we hear other people's perspectives. If we were in a live group session, I know the conversation would be very, very lively. But I appreciate everybody who did chime in and tune in here today.
100%. Passionate one, last comment. Passionate one. Principle is to, did I read this? Principle is to know your
you read it.
like your font. Did I already read that?
Mhm.
Okay, there goes. Okay, good. info@cslpalmdesert.org. I appreciate you, my brother. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for your
Yeah.
willingness. You're one of the only people that I know who was your community who was actually willing to address this.
Dig it.
So and I've mentioned that to countless people. So I really, really appreciate what you all are doing and willing to do around this particular conversation.
Dig it. Dig it. Dig it a lot. And I appreciate Dr. Joe. He's going on sabbatical for initiating these conversations, and love and bless him as he gets some rest and rejuvenation. And we'll keep this thing going. Tomorrow, what day is it today? Tuesday? Yeah, it must be Tuesday. Tomorrow, Sensational 6, 10 a.m. Thursday, I'm going to be with Jeff Harrison. We're pivoting a little bit. Jeff Harrison, our representative from Swing Point Media, will be with me. We're going to talk about all the amazing things he's up to and what we're doing as a community. And then Friday, Life on Love with Reverend Charles. I just, again, be prepared for some special guests. And Fridays are reserved for me to just kind of get crazy and have a good time. Not that I don't get crazy, but Friday's going to be fun. Saturday meditation, Sunday service. Jeffon, God bless you, brother.
Thank you, Charles.
Hey, man.
I really appreciate it.
Namaste. And
Namaste.
to the community, please, there's a button if you're on the website, please contribute to what we're up to. Give to the community. We appreciate your financial gifts. We want this to keep going and going strong. And I know our community's blessed financially in abundant ways. We're so blessed. And this is an example of it with Jeffon and the conversations that we have, and I'm so very grateful. Yeah. God bless you, brother.
Thank you, Reverend Charles.
Hey.
Have a wonderful week.
Hey, you as well.
Okay.
Big love.
Much love. Bye-bye.